showtime.
It's time for that radio show everyone loves.
Do not attempt to change the station. Just listen, and we'll keep broadcasting.
It's time to begin the show.
103.9 LI News Radio presents Your Island, the very best in talk radio, with your host, Tom Schiliro.
And once again, welcome back. Believe it or not, it's Friday in July, and there's a good weekend coming up weather-wise, so I'll tell you, this is the best of times. This segment of our program is being brought to you by the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association. The PBA serves to support law enforcement, participate in special events and programs, all designed to help protect our community. They care about you and keeping us all safe, from the anti-drinking and driving campaigns to protecting our children with education on the Megan's Law. PBA promotes a great relationship between the police and the people it's sworn to serve. Suffolk County is one of the safest counties in the country, and the PBA takes pride and strong belief in our security. They have honored our fallen heroes and contribute greatly to our suburban way of life. Need to know more? Go right to the website, www.suffolkcountypba.org. Noel DiGirolamo Perez. Like I said, a lot to talk about. I like Fridays, and I'll tell you what. It's the end of the week. It's July, like I said. The weather report is good. It's a time of good feeling. And in the meantime, we've got a good show today. We're going to review some of the stuff that happened over the week. And we've got something kind of interesting at the end that we're going to finish off the week with. Because some stuff that we're going to talk about today is not so great. And I have with me in the studio is Suffolk County Legislator Sarah Anker. Sarah is the legislator from the 6th Legislative District. She's one of our, I'm going to say this, I know you don't like the word, senior contributor.
Ooh, I like it. No, that's good.
Yeah, so she's been here for a couple of years. It just helps us out, inputs on, brings us up to date on local issues. And very important that we know about these local issues. Now, there's some news reports out there that are quite disturbing. And one of them is the issue of, we don't like to think of this, but this concept of cancer clusters, and that there are studies that are done. Some of those are notable studies that are saying that there are incidences of folks being diagnosed in certain areas, which of course has a lot of us thinking, why? Why does that happen? Is it environmental? And you pretty much got started in politics.
Yeah, I did.
With this.
Yeah.
This would inspire you to become a public servant. And, I'm going to say this is a life and death issue, Sarah Anker. What's the latest? I don't want to start a show depressing, but it's important that we talk about this because it's that important. Sarah Anker.
And you have to have hope, and you have to have knowledge. And, again, good afternoon, Tom. And I hate talking about kind of dark things when people are eating their lunch. I always tease and let's talk about good, happy stuff. But, this is about knowledge and understanding of what we can do to prevent cancer. And unfortunately, there's an article, I think it says in Newsday today, and it says 3 Long Island communities show a high cancer rates, and those are Centereach, Farmingville, and Selden. Now, I experienced this situation about 15 years ago when New York State Department of Health announced that my town had elevated breast cancer rates.
That was Mount Sinai, right?
A cancer cluster,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
And
Mount
that's what,
Sinai.
For those who are not familiar, that's what a cancer cluster is.
Right.
High incidences above the national norm.
Right, and they pull out different factors, but then they come up with these locations that they can't explain why. It was Mount Sinai, Coram, and Port Jeff Station. And so what I did, I was, at that time, it was about 15 years ago, I had 3 small children, one still in, I think, an infant carrier at that time. But I was very concerned because neighbors in my community were coming down with breast cancer. My grandmother had just passed away from breast cancer. Now, she had lived in North Carolina at the time, but it still affected me, and I wanted to do more. So what I did, I started a not-for-profit Community Health and Environment Coalition, and we advocated the state to come back into our communities and tell us what we need to do to protect ourselves and our families. So they actually, the state came back, they did an investigation, and that's what they're doing right now for these communities that I just mentioned, to understand if there's an environmental source, maybe groundwater contamination, is there something in the air? We need to make sure that government has the accountability. If they're going to say that we have this problem, they need to tell us, well, how can we fix this problem, and how can we protect ourselves from this?
Yeah, again, this is an issue that many of us don't want to talk about, but I'm going to say this, and I'll be very bold to say that there's not a person out there listening to this program that has not been, and I'll even use the word, you used to say indirectly, directly affected.
Yes.
Family member, friend, so on, going through the treatments, diagnosed with cancer, because there's a multitude of different types of cancers. And also the research that's being done as to why Long Island has, and I have to say, traditionally had higher rates than before. And I think unless we come up with reasoning for this, and to keep the pressure on environmental issues, because it has to be something in the air or the water or whatever is affecting this. The bottom line is we need to save lives. And we need to bring down those rates. And I think it's so important. I mean, I'm almost don't even like talking about it, because I would have to say in the last 6 months, I've heard of 3 people who I know very well that are now going through cancer treatments,
right.
chemotherapy, radiation, and so on. And I just say this is not right. Not to mention the good number of people I know that have passed away at young ages in their 40s and 50s. Our number here is 631-451-1039. Talking about the recent announcement of a cancer cluster in 3 communities that Sarah Anker, Suffolk County Legislator, in the studio right now talking about. And again, your work 15 years ago, great work.
Thank you.
But a lot more still has to be done.
There needs to be more done. And we need to understand that when we as a society, and especially as a government, we know that there's a problem, such as groundwater contamination.
Yes, big part of it.
And a lot of that has been created by our military, and I'm a Navy brat. My dad was in the Navy all his life, and I respect our military. But we need to make sure that we clean up our mess, that we're not making other people ill, because that seems to be what has happened. Suffolk County has investigated certain sites, Clemente Park, with the contractors dumping carcinogenic material.
That's right.
Materials that cause cancer. And we need to address that and ramp it up. We know to some extent what we can do to protect ourselves. We need to push that, bring it up another notch. If there's someone out there that sees illegal dumping, you guys got to call in, call Suffolk County Police. We can investigate that side. If your water just doesn't seem right, you need to call Suffolk County Health Department. We have resources to address these problems.
Well, they say that's a key component is our drinking and our groundwater. We had a closed gas station in Maniville where the tanks were not properly secured. Yep. And they related just one gas station, one fill tank that seeped into the groundwater and caused high levels of benzene, which is a cancer-causing agent. And it's that simple, just that one location causing a good part of that. And we have to be really, as you say, in essence of, if you see something, obviously say something, vigilant when it comes to this. It's just, horrific when it, my frustration exists because whenever I see a doctor or somebody involved in oncology research, I grab the whole when I said, when are you people going to do something? When are you people going to find the answers? And I get a look of frustration, but I'm trying not to be so negative. But on the other hand, I hear about strides that they are making. So I think it has to come on both sides.
Well,
we really got to turn the corner on this. I've always believed, and I'm editorializing right now, that we should have a program like a landing a man on the moon program, like John Kennedy said in 1960. We'll do it by the end of the decade. Well, this president should get up there and say, in the next 5 years, we're going to cure cancer.
Well, that's it.
And do that. And I believe we should do that.
Well, the latest, and I continue to follow the cancer issue and what's causing it, how do you cure it, what are the what's the technology available, and what they're discovering, and this is all recent in the past year or two, is that doctors understand that the body can heal itself.
Yes, immunotherapy.
So and to target, they understand that there's a way to target the cancers that are in the human body. That is going to be very beneficial. We're going to see a lot of technology improvements, and I think that's where we're headed. Now, how do you get cancer? Well, obviously, there's chemicals out there that are called carcinogens.
Yes.
We have identified those chemicals. So why don't we clean that up? And that's what we need to do. We need to get those folks that have created this mess, polluted water, polluted our even farms. The farmers, they didn't know they were putting down cancer-causing agents.
The fertilizer. Yeah. Even the folks living in these middle-class communities that we all live in say, well, look, my lawn doesn't look so good, so I'm just going to roll this stuff that I brought from Home Depot. Yeah. Maybe not a good idea.
Not a good idea. Guys, listen, people out there, read the label. If you don't have to put down, the chemicals, the pesticides, the herbicides, don't do it. If you got to do a little bit, fine. That's called integrated pest management, and that's what our government is supporting, especially in New York State here in the school system. And when I was on the school board, boy, did I advocate for that, and they do have that now.
Yeah, 631-451-1039 is our number. Just talking about all these different aspects that has caused almost Long Island to be looked at by the CDC in terms of these cancer clusters and so on. And also, is it in our groundwater? Because we do rely on our drinking water, not from upstate reservoirs, but from our groundwater. We're kind of unique when it comes to the rest of the state of New York.
Right. What goes what goes in our water? This is what we're drinking, and this is why Suffolk County has made water #1 priority to address not only nitrogen but also the chemicals and even pharmaceutical products and medicines. This is what happens. And I know, again, this isn't a pleasant topic to talk about.
No, it's not. But
lunch.
In the same time, if people could be out there right now listening and thinking about this, then if we can get 1 or 2 people to alter behavior a little bit, then
absolutely,
we can move it back from that direction.
Yeah, and again, your health. Like I said, they're finding that the body is able to heal to some extent, not in extreme cases of cancer, but what you eat and what you drink, exercising, your whole body, your emotional state. When you're stressed, your body is not as healthy. So, and that's why the summer is important to really enjoy and get out. Be careful with the ticks. Be careful with the sun. There's certain things we got to consider.
And clean air, clean water. And I find it interesting, just one second back to that immunotherapy that's now being used. I can remember, I think it was 2008, I was at an event, and someone had introduced me to a doctor from Stony Brook who was involved in the cancer research, oncology research. And I did the same thing. And that was 8 years ago. And kind of putting the responsibility on him that you people need to do something here. And he mentioned that to me. He goes, that's going to be the wave of the future. And now I hear it's actually being done right now as we speak. It
is being done. And, let's hope with the technology that we have, like you said, in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be able to make a dramatic difference. But it all starts in the exposure to these things, these chemicals.
We hear a lot of pros and cons against the 45th President Donald Trump. He did say something, because I'm very attuned to this, in his State of the Union address, that one of the proposals that he made was to allow people in the terminally ill stages of cancer to bypass FDA rules to go right to experimental drugs if they so choose. Yeah. And yet that never received any sort of real publicity. I thought it was a bold statement on his part. Again, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, it doesn't matter. I was waiting for a president to say that by saying, look, we have a lot of sick folks in this country that we need to help. And I believe that we can help it. And I wish there would be that sort of a commitment like we made with the Man on the Moon program in the 1960s. Do it right now, but also allow these experimental drugs to be given to the people that are afflicted now, and I pray for that. Yeah, I pray for that.
What there's a problem is finding people to participate in the clinical trials. And I had met with Stony Brook University Hospital's Cancer Center, and they're going to be opening, cutting the ribbon and opening this. It's a beautiful facility, latest technology, and there is so much science behind what the doctors are doing there. And, they need to understand that people are waiting, but their problem is the folks don't know. The residents, even doctors, doctors that haven't gone back to school in a while, they don't know the latest and greatest technology and what's being done. There's a lot of informed doctors out there, but what's interesting is that, again, getting back to the clinical trials, a lot of these trials are financed by the pharmaceutical companies, which I have a little.
I know.
I'm not happy with some of those large multi-billion multi-billion-dollar corporations, and the opioid issue, how they basically, and I always say this, they open the floodgates to our war on addiction that we're fighting right now, and they should be the ones paying for rehabilitation and education. So, but getting back again, the understanding technology and medication and trying to address an illness, you got to make sure that there is no bias, and that's the job of the government. That's a Food and Drug Administration. They better, they got to step up. But the problem is, a lot of those folks that are in that agency are from the pharmaceutical companies. So how do you
that's a big part of it. You kind of led me into where I did want to explore is the role of government in this very difficult health issue. To me, just transcends every other issue because it's a life and death issue, and it's affecting us here on Long Island. We have Adrian Esposito, who comes on this program every once in a while, Citizens Campaign for the Environment. That's always an undercurrent there whenever they're talking about clean water and clean air and less carbon fuels and all of these polluting, causing energy sources. It's to me, that's always the underscore there, is that we need to take this stuff out of the atmosphere, out of our water, and to stop these cancer clusters. And the fact that we have private organizations, 501c3, non-for-profits that do this is a great thing. But coupled with the fact that I have to say, Suffolk County government, Republicans and Democrats alike, seem to be in tune with this. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. No, you're right. Becoming a part of this organization that I created 15 years ago, I also was part of different committees, and I got to understand what different levels of government can do. But, the question is, will they do it as far as addressing these toxic sites and cleaning them up that affect, these chemicals affecting our health? And one of them, there are a few, there's more than a few, Lawrence Aviation and Port Jeff Station. So I live in Mount Sinai, and I would read in the papers, Lawrence Aviation basically have polluted a lot of the groundwater in Port Jefferson. The site was used as a location to degrease airplanes, and the chemical that they used is a carcinogen. So you think the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency on the federal level, you think the DEC, that's a state level environmental protection, agency. You think they would have done something quickly. Guess what? They didn't. Yeah. It was Suffolk County Health Department that rose the bar for the government and to make sure that the owner, this guy Cohen, cleaned up his mess. It went on for years and years, and I would occasionally catch up to see the status of, okay, are they cleaning up the site? It took so long until Suffolk County stepped in there and said, this has got to be addressed right now. So it became what they call a Superfund site, which is a site declared by the federal government to be highly toxic.
Yes, yeah.
And, again, and I believe, they're finishing up. They are cleaning it up. I believe that site, they're thinking about creating a train station there. They're looking into redeveloping it. And a lot of these sites, they're called brownfields. And these brownfields, were contaminated, cleaned up, and used, not for playgrounds, not for where people are going to be in touch, in contact with soil, but they're used to have a source of revitalization within a community. Yeah. And that's really important.
And, you mentioned the EPA. It's in the news today. Pruitt, the EPA chief, resigns. He had such a checkered background. And now the second in command, again, there's questions there. We need a good person, head of the EPA. I wish, it's my hope that this president would recognize that. Coming from Long Island, I'm going to include Queens and Long Island, but he also has homes on the East End, that as president of the United States, that he looks at the EPA and rather than saying, well, we need to cut the regulations because companies like you just described tend to operate and will take shortcuts. Companies will always be profit conscious. And if it's easier to use a carcinogen substance to clean planes, they're going to do that.
Yeah, but what they did was they didn't dispose of it properly. They dumped it in big leaching
fields.
fields.
Because it was too expensive to dispose of it properly. But if there was an EPA or a State Department of Environmental Conservation that monitors that, and I don't mean to overregulate folks. I never mean to that. But I believe in the protection of consumers when it comes to this, only because of this insidious disease, the multitude forms of cancer that we here on Long Island are experiencing too much. And I say that passionately because I believe in it extremely strong. Now, we're going to take a short break. I'm with Suffolk County Legislator Sarah Anker, and we'll talk about some proposed legislation that's happening in Nassau County that I think dovetails on what we're talking about right here. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Give us a call, 631-451-1039 when we get back.
Hi, this is Doug Gray of the Marshall Tucker Band. Always keep your eyes open for motorcycles. This message is brought to you by my buddies at Long Island Abate.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back to this segment of our program being brought to you by the Civil Service Employees Association. Folks working together to make New York a better place for all of us. They have 265,000 workers in the great state of New York. 48,000 of them can be found right here on Long Island. They are your bus drivers, groundskeepers, and clerical staff. They plow and pave your streets, clean your office buildings. They provide child care and care for the mentally and physically disabled. From Buffalo to Brookhaven, CSCA members work hard for everyone. Never quit serving our communities and fighting for the working people. Nick Lamort, President. Also brought to you by the great motorcycle rights and safety advocacy group Long Island Abate. American Bikers for Awareness, Training, Education promotes safety on our roads. The 2- and 3-wheeled rider to ensure automobile drivers look and see and know that motorcycles are everywhere. They promote training, common sense laws, attend court proceedings to ensure justice for those involved in motorcycle accidents where drivers drunk, distracted, or recklessly careless. Call Abate President Jim Barr at 1-888-LI-ABATE or visit the website longislandabate.org. Long Island Abate wants everybody to know, watch out for those left-hand turns. That's when most motorcycle accidents do occur. Now, getting back into our topic, we're talking about the recent New York State Cancer Registry putting Center Reach, Farmingville, and Selden back into that cancer cluster. With me in the studio is Suffolk County Legislator Sarah Anker talking about that. And you heard me mention in our first segment the Citizens Campaign for the Environment and Adrian Esposito, Executive Director. Luckily enough, we tracked Adrian down while she's running around Long Island, just really helping the folks when it comes down to these environmental issues that we started to talk about. And I made the statement. Adrian, are you with us?
I sure am.
You know, I made the statement, Adrian, in our first segment that your group, which does a multitude of just some great things, that and just your comment on, I said that environmental issues, things that you fight, clean air, clean water, fighting for all of that, that's a precursor to what could be causing these cancer clusters. And this is a subject area that is second to none because it's life and death for some wonderful, wonderful people right here on Long Island. Is that a fair statement to make, that environmentally that we need to be vigilant?
I'm sorry. Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think most scientists would agree with that as well. You have to look at what is the common factor in the communities, right? It's the water they drink. It's the air they breathe. It's the environment that they're exposed to on a routine basis. It would be very unlikely, although not impossible, that they would all have the same diet or the same, smoking habits. So it has to be something that has more of a common thread or, public accessibility, like air, water, and land resources.
We mentioned the concept of water, the fact that we sit on our water supply here, the groundwater here on Long Island. And your organization, once again, over the years, you've been a guest on this program many times, having to do with the fertilizers or making our lawns look nice, or companies. And Sarah Anker just brought up a company over there in Port Jeff Station.
I have to say that Adrian has been one of the most prominent environmentalist here on Long Island and actually in the state of New York, if not nationally, if not globally. Citizens Campaign for the Environment is there's really hardly any organization that compares to yours.
Again, that whole idea of companies that without regulation, and that's a bad word among certain political ends, but I think we all need to come together politically and say that regulation when it comes to life and death issues, and this is the fight that the Citizens Campaign has been fighting for many years.
Right, and they are not afraid. I mean, talking about chutzpah, is that boy, she gets out there, her team, and Adrian, it's important that you are there and you don't back down. And, that's really what it takes to make sure government does the right thing. I have to give you a lot of credit. We're talking about the article that's in Newsday designating the 3 towns, the Center Reach, Selden, and Farmingville. This is deja vu. This is what I read 15 years ago, probably 16 years ago, regarding my hometown, breast cancer cluster.
Yeah.
And I want Adrian to weigh in on that. Is this ever going to get better? Are we going to stop reading about how Long Island is almost like the epicenter by the CDC for these type of things?
Well, I cannot look into a crystal ball in the future and let you know that, but I do want to let you know a couple things. One is I think both of you are exactly right, that, this is about industry, it's about exposure, and you know what? It's about regulation. So Sarah's exactly right when she says that. And regulation is not a dirty word. The reason we have environmental regulations is because back in the 70s when we didn't have it, we had rivers that went on fire. We had water bodies that could not sustain life because they were so polluted. We had air that we weren't supposed to be breathing because it was so polluted, but we had no other choice. So we need environmental regulations to protect our health, no matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or what you are. It's a universal. But also I want to say something about industry. So on Monday, this is a little bit of a selfless plug, but on Monday, CC is putting out a first-of-its-kind report. We tested 30 very common household products, shampoo, laundry soap, and bath gel. And we tested them for 1,4-dioxane, which is a cancer-causing chemical.
Yes, yeah.
And you'll have to wait till Monday, but you're not going to believe what we found, because we could barely believe it.
So what we'll do is we'll make it a
products.
We'll have you on next week, because now you got me sitting here. I'm not even going to have a good weekend. I'm going to be thinking about this report.
And I know we're getting all these calls at the office saying, well, what about this product? And what about this product? And I'm like, I can't tell you till Monday, but I have to tell you, these are the most common products. Some are baby products, and I think it's a very interesting report. And unfortunately, I will tell you, the vast majority do have some level of 1,4-dioxane. A few have really high levels. And so these are things that we're taking a bath with, that we're using in our hair, and we're washing our laundry with. Yeah. So I'm just using that as being an example of how we become exposed to cancer-causing chemicals in multiple ways. So whether it's drinking water or our shampoo or, breathing, these are things we have to have regulations about, and we have to protect ourselves, because cancer, we deserve better. We deserve better, and we can have better.
Good. Right. Well said. And you can't overregulate when it comes to life and death issues. I don't care if you're a conservative or a liberal or progressive, whatever you want to call yourself these days. You cannot overregulate.
Right.
Too many of us. I'm sure Adrian, Sarah, myself, we know people in our lives.
But knowledge is power. And Adrian and the other environmentalists or advocates, they're here to provide that information. Suffolk County has a cancer prevention task force, and I'm on that.
Exactly.
And we have a list. You can go online and see some of the kind of toxic products that we have. But if you don't know, you can't protect yourself. And I got to say, so I told my mom, I have some ants, and she goes, well, what are you going to do? I go, well, they'll go away, or use a little ant traps. She goes, no, use chlordane. I'm like, Mom, That's a carcinogen. She had, she was, she's 70 some years old, and it's
she's old school.
Yeah. Well, your grandmother used to do that, and then unfortunately I had to say, Granny Mary, we called her Granny Mary, she died of cancer.
Yeah. But I know Adrian's busy. We were able to track it down because the organization, her name came up as executive director. I don't want to get too much in politics, but there is headlines today. EPA administrator does quit. It was almost like what's going on at that organization. We do rely on the EPA. I know we're close with the DEC. Maybe we could look towards them. What are your thoughts on the politics over at the EPA? Is that something we could ever rely on anymore?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, I think that Pruitt will go down in the history of the United States of America as being the worst EPA director in history. He did nothing to protect the public, and did many things to continue or increase our exposure to chemicals. It was unbelievable. Unfortunately, now the acting director is somebody else from the coal industry. This is it's almost unfathomable for me to see what's happening over the last 2 years. As someone who's been involved for 30 years in environmental protection work, I can't even process what's happening. That's how bad it is with the EPA. Can the EPA do better? Can they go back to what they were? Yes. But they need the leadership to do that. And
I don't think it would be a bad idea to have the next EPA administrator coming from Long Island with a name like Adrian Esposito.
Ooh, there you go, Adrian. There you go. And
let's put that out there.
Okay.
Adrian, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and keep up the great work. I mean, the voice has to be heard.
Yes, definitely.
It's so important. Life and death issues when it comes to this.
Have a good weekend, you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Adrian Esposito, Director, Citizens Campaign for the Environment. I did want to get into, it's almost related. Nassau County is considering now a bill to regulate the vaping industry. That was supposed to be the panacea to smoking. And we know smoking causes cancer. We know that. If people out there that are still involved with this, do whatever you can. But let's say it's not their fault. If you are a smoker and you're addicted to cigarettes, it's not your fault. You have to do something to stop it. But the tobacco companies, as we well know, and I could say this, made smoking addicting. Now we have vaping that they're saying is like the safer way to smoke. Sarah, Anker, what are your thoughts? I'm getting almost tired of this stuff.
I know. Again, you're talking about some type of regulation to protect the people that live here in this country. When these lobbyists and these big companies basically steer the direction of the elected official, you're in trouble. We're all in trouble. And what has happened with liquid nicotine, and this is the chemical used for vaping, they've found that it has carcinogens in it. Formaldehyde, this stuff comes from China. And then it's imported in.
So does that fentanyl that they're lacing with. That comes from China, too.
And
it's killing people.
If you're going to go after China, I know they're talking about tariffs, but, do something what's killing our American citizens. I proposed legislation a couple years ago after a small child, a 5-year-old child, died after drinking his mother's liquid nicotine. And it's sweet, it's bubblegum flavor, whatever. The mother had no idea how toxic liquid nicotine is. If you spill it on your hand, it is absorbed into your body, and it is deadly. So what I did as a legislator in Suffolk County, every retailer must show a sign at their register, the dangers of liquid nicotine, because it could cause death. Pregnant women have issues. So
that's the current law in Suffolk County.
In Suffolk County.
What is Nassau considering?
So there is a vote going through the Nassau County Legislature, and it will basically direct and require all retailers to place the e-cigarettes and liquid nicotine behind the counter. So this way you're not going to see it, because what happens is the kids, they'll see the cute little packaging and they'll say, when I say kids, I mean older kids, but even these middle school kids are they're smoking and vaping, and what they're doing too, they're putting it in these things called jewels. And the jewels looks like a flash drive, a little cartridge. And they hide it, on their clothes, in their purse, whatever. And they smoke these things in school. So the schools are having a really hard time cracking down on liquid nicotine and the vaping. But so again, Nassau County, they're hoping, out of sight, out of mind. But the federal government has got to step up and do something about this, or even the state and New York, in Suffolk County, and now Nassau. You have to be 21 and older to purchase this, which is okay. That's your right. Originally, liquid nicotine was used to get you off the cigarettes. And they said, oh, this is great. You're not going to be breathing in all that toxic stuff. Well, guess what? Vaping has toxic stuff in it. It's not pure. It has nicotine, which is addictive.
I mean, again, not being an expert, I don't know much about this liquid stuff because I never really, I was never a cigarette smoker. Never, ever.
Yeah.
And, but I do know plenty of friends that are. And I would say there's a chemical dependency in tobacco somehow. And now this vaping thing would be almost easier.
Yeah. Oh, it's nicotine. Nicotine, if you can compare it to an opioid, it creates an addiction in your body. And if kids as young as 10 years old are getting a hold of this stuff and using it and thinking it's cool, and look, I'm vaping, and and the parents don't know, well, these young children will be as they get older, they're going to start smoking cigarettes. They're going to, or they will continue this stuff, and it just creates so many health issues.
So it's not the safe answer.
No, it's
wasn't it billed that way? Our number here is 631-451-1039.
Yes.
We have a few more minutes with Sarah Anker, but it's not the safe answer.
No, it's not. No.
Well, it's got to be restricted. We've got to do whatever we can. We could have an Adrian Esposito on, and we could talk about clean air and clean water, but there's also personal decisions that we make as a culture and as people that are causing these cancers to proliferate.
Absolutely. And people will say, well, the parents, they got to step up their game and they got to do what they can. But unfortunately, our children these days, and I have I have a 17 up to a 26. They know more about technology than I do. They can order this stuff online. It's available out there. It's about education. It's about regulation to some extent to get these very toxic products away from our children. That's my biggest priority, is safety, especially with our kids.
And that's where the legislature has to be involved. And again, on a local level, we can't even ask, certainly you're not going to ask Congress to do anything, maybe something from Albany. But I always said this, it really comes right down to our local officials.
It does. And it really comes down to being a strong advocate. And that's what Adrian has been doing.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of wonderful environmental advocates, but also in the health realm. I worked a lot with these wonderful men and women and the breast cancer coalitions. They know so much, and I've learned a lot from them. And as a legislator, I can use that knowledge. Like I said, knowledge is power.
Yeah, when we think about it, just a few minutes left. Again, one issue that you've been working very vigorously for us here in Suffolk County is the opiate epidemic. We did see this week an article that very distressful. Very distressing.
Yes.
Of an uptick.
Absolutely.
In overdoses.
And what has happened, and I've said this before on your show, is that there is a product called fentanyl. And then there's another product that's even more powerful called carfentanil. Fentanyl is about 100 times more powerful than heroin. So when folks get addicted to heroin or the opioids, because their doctor perhaps prescribed these pills to them, they may go through rehabilitation and get off the drugs, but then they may hop back on, and break their ability to turn them down, and they go back to the same level they were using, and they die. These people die. And what the county has basically required with every police officer and first response unit is Narcan, naloxone. Yes. So this will basically reverse the chemicals in the brain that shuts down the body that these chemicals, produce. Okay. So there's, again, Tom, I am working diligently on the educational component, working with the schools, law enforcement, getting these things off the streets. They're cracking down. We have a new police commissioner, Geraldine Hart. She's wonderful. I'm working with her. Really, the DA, Tim Sini. Another element, of course, is rehabilitation. Folks are addicted. We need to do something for them, and there are places for folks to go, but we don't have definite answers. Everyone is different with their addiction, and there are so many wonderful not-for-profit organizations, and you can't give up.
Partnership between the community, the civic activists, the self-help community, and of course government.
Absolutely.
This is a problem, and it's not just here in Suffolk County. It's all over the country. About a minute or so left. Let's go. Let's leave on something good. I mean, the concert series. I love your concert series that you have over there in Rocky Point. You got the best bands. Give us an update in the last minute or so.
Okay, something good.
Something good. We're going to leave on a good note.
I always say this. People are eating their lunch. They want to relax, enjoy, and on the Friday, and then we talk about some depressing news. But it's important. It's important. It is important. But downtown Rocky Point, we're going to be having our summer concert series. And again, I co-sponsor this with the Rocky Point VFW Post 6249. This Tuesday coming up, we have at 7 p.m. Strawberry Fields, the Ultimate Beatles Tribute Band. So if you're into the Beatles music, you can come dressed as a Beatles, 1960s or so. Bring a lawn chair, a blanket. It will be held at the St. Anthony's Church. That's downtown Rocky Point. It's a beautiful time. Bring your family, bring your friends. A lot of the folks from Rocky Point, they just walk from their homes and come into right there on the parking lot. July 24th at 7 p.m. we have Southbound, which is a country tribute band. Be ready to do some line dancing on that one.
All right.
July 31st at 7 p.m. Swing Time, authentic band and live in living color. This is swing music. I don't know how they can fit so many instruments on the stage, but they do. I think there's probably almost 20 instruments. And then the grand finale, of course, is Mike Del Giudice Big Shot and celebrating Billy Joel Tribute Band. And that is August the 7th at 7 p.m. and again at St. Anthony's Church in Rocky Point.
Oh, it all sounds great. Once again, Suffolk County Legislator Sarah Anker. I want to thank her for doing her every couple of weeks in the studio talking about some important issues. Now, don't go away. Got an interesting concept that we're going to be talking about is what happens you are a supporter of this president and you become the victim of a violent attack. You become a victim of criminal mischief and you're targeted. It seems to be happening quite a bit. And we have a great guest coming on from the state of Massachusetts. Diana Ploss is going to be calling on, talking about her particular, what happened in her particular case, and we'll be talking about that. I'm your host, Tom Schiliro. We're going to take a short break. When we get back, talking about violence, if you have a political viewpoint, violence against you. We'll be right back.